And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the FF Face Off. I'm your host, Anthony Servino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at the FF Face Off and at fffaceoff.com. We can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms. We're going to take a look at my top 12 Dynasty fantasy football quarterbacks to help you dominate your fantasy football league. Let's get started with my number 12 ranked quarterback, and it's going to be a rookie. It's going to be the only rookie that I am ranking in my top 12 because, let's face it, I don't love this past year's rookie class. Forget about Stroud, forget about Willis, forget about Bryce Young. Anthony Richardson is the only guy that I'm ranking in my top 12, and I'm putting him at 12. He has a really high ceiling. He's also really raw, but what do we know? He's more than likely going to start for the Indianapolis Colts in week 1. He compares himself to Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton. He's going to bring a high rushing floor, we believe. And I say we believe because we have never seen Anthony Richardson play football in the NFL. He's in an offense on a team ran by Stan Steichen. What do we know about Steichen? Well, he helped Justin Herbert get going. He helped make Jalen Hurts pop. And he's going to run a similar offense in Indy that he ran with Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to be run-centric. They're going to use Richardson's skill set as a rusher to open up the deep pass. I'm ranking Anthony Richardson here at 12. I believe if you're going to take a risk on a rookie quarterback in your dynasty leagues, then Anthony Richardson is the one you take the risk on, and I'm not doing it early. I am doing it right around his FFPC dynasty ADP of 43.5. Let's move to my number 11 ranked signal caller, and that is Kyler Murray. And I get it, Kyler Murray's going to miss some time this year. But Kyler Murray, when he's on the football field, he is electric. Kyler Murray, despite only playing in 11 games last year, was a QB7 in fantasy points per game. Go back a year before that in 14 games, QB4 in fantasy points per game. You go back 2020 where he played in 16, QB3 in fantasy points per game. In his rookie year of 2019, QB11. So 4 years in the NFL, 4 years inside the top 11 in fantasy points per game. And then outside of that aforementioned rookie campaign, he's been a top 7 quarterback in fantasy points per game 3 straight seasons. Once he gets back on the field, you have Marquise Brown. We assume he's still going to have DeAndre Hopkins because DeAndre Hopkins is still there at the moment. Anything can happen, but we have to assume that both Hopkins and Hollywood Brown are going to be the top 2 receivers that Kyler Murray's going to throw to. Eventually, they'll get Zach Ertz back. They have James Conner, Rondale Moore. They're pretty damn loaded at skill position for Kyler Murray. And oh, by the way, Kyler Murray is also absolutely positively fantastic when he is running with the football. It's just a matter of, can Kyler Murray come back and then stay healthy? Health is the biggest question with Kyler Murray. I would rank this guy higher, but there are some question marks. Again, health is a question mark, and also the long-term future of DeAndre Hopkins. Even if he's there for a full season in 2023, you can almost guarantee that DeAndre Hopkins will not be on this team in 2024 and beyond, which means we really don't know who Kyler Murray is going to be throwing the football to in 2024 and beyond. Zach Ertz probably won't be here either. They do have Trey McBride, but we really don't know who Trey McBride is. James Conner's probably not going to be here after this year either. So because of all the uncertainties and the injury concerns, Kyler Murray ranked as my QB 11, despite all the upside and rushing upside and ceiling in the world. Number 10, I do have Dak Prescott. And Prescott last year, QB 13 in fantasy points per game. Go back to 2021, it was a QB 9. However, we do have a few years, right, where Dak Prescott looked like he was going to be the next big thing. 2019 was a QB 3. Then 2020, only 5 games, 27.9 fantasy points per game. He was pacing to be the QB1, and then again, QB9 in 2021 coming off the injury. Last year, QB13. Only 23 passing touchdowns for Dak last year, but he only played in 12 games. Only 2,860 passing yards last year, but he only played in 12 games. Dak is going to now have an upgraded wide receiver group. Can we make a case that last year Dak was a little bit off, threw a lot of interceptions? Well, they took away Mari Cooper, and he was thrown to guys like, not named CD Lamb and Dalton Schultz, guys like Noah Brown a lot, and Michael Gallup coming off the injury. We are now going to insert Brandon Cooks into this offense to be the big play threat opposite CD Lamb. Gallup's going to be in his rightful place as the 3. They moved off of Dalton Schultz, but I keep hammering it home. They moved off of Schultz because they trust their process when it comes to drafting tight ends. They've drafted a lot of nice tight ends through the years, whether it's Witten, we've seen Blake Jarwin flash, and Blake Jarwin would have been good if Dalton Schultz didn't flash, and then now Schultz is gone. We saw last year both Ferguson and Hendershot filled in pretty well when Schultz was banged up. So I think the tight end position is not going to skip a beat. They move off of Zeke. You insert Tony Pollard, who's really explosive, especially as a receiver. Then they bring in Deuce Vaughn, who's going to be a weapon, especially when he's catching passes out of the backfield. Plenty of weapons here for Dak Prescott. We're drafting him as a 10th best dynasty quarterback, and this is a guy whose range of outcomes is as good as the QB3, and on a bad year, you'd have to go back to 2018, where he was a QB16 of fantasy points per game. I don't foresee that happening. I think Dak Prescott's almost a lock to finish as a QB1 in that category, with the addition of Brandon Cooks and now a full-time role from Tony Pollard. Let's move to my number 9 ranked quarterback. That's Deshaun Watson. And I get it. Deshaun did not look good out of the gate. He only played in 6 games. It took him a couple of games to heat up. But towards the end of the year, he did give us 2 quality outings of QB1 performances. From week 13 to 18, it was a QB 30, 14, 21, 20. Then he ends the year as the QB8 and the QB6 in those weeks. Deshaun Watson got better as he began to get acclimated to the NFL and game speed and his teammates. Now he's going to have a full offseason to prepare and work with an offense that looks pretty damn loaded with Cooper and Njoku. They brought in Elijah Moore. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones and a guy named Nick Chubb out of the backfield. I really like what the Browns are going to bring to the table. I think they're going to be one of the more underrated offenses because people forget. And even if they don't forget, maybe they want to discount Deshaun Watson because he makes dumbass decisions off the field. But if you remember, when Deshaun Watson was last on the field, the QB5 in fantasy points per game in 2020, and in 2019 was the QB2, and then 2018 QB5. Deshaun Watson, fully healthy with a full offseason to prep and a full season to play, has that same top 5 QB1 upside. And we can draft Deshaun Watson right now as what? He's my 9th ranked quarterback, and he's going as the 35th player off the board in the FFPC. Big time discount for a guy who still has that big time QB1 ceiling. Next up, and this is where it gets controversial because I feel like I'm lower on this guy than most. It's Justin Fields. I know Justin Fields has a lot going for him. He finally got going last year. Finished as the QB5 in fantasy points per game. Did a ton of damage with his legs. I only have him ranked as my 8th best quarterback, despite the Bears bringing in DJ Moore and Chase Claypool at the trade deadline. They have Mooney. Got a couple of new running backs to go along with Khalil Herbert. Now, this offense on paper looks loaded. The offensive line should even be better. We don't know who Justin Fields is as a winning quarterback because he's not won a lot. And here's where I'm going. Justin Fields going to have to get paid. He's going to have to get paid soon. But can we make a case that if the Bears are picking in the top 5 next year, because Justin Fields, he might look really good in a highlight reel, but if he doesn't translate to wins, we can make the case that the Bears are picking a guy like Caleb Williams, if they're up there and if they can make the move to get him. That's not out of the realm of possibility. And it might sound crazy now, but I am not going to leave that out of my decision when I'm drafting dynasty quarterbacks because there's no guarantee that Justin Fields is on the Chicago Bears if he doesn't start winning football games and the Bears are picking in the top 5 or 3 next year, which could happen. So because of a lot of unknowns, and we have to also consider both Claypool and Mooney are in their contract years. So what is this wide receiver group going to look like without those two guys? Because I doubt Chicago brings either one of them back, and DJ Moore can't do it by themselves. And let's face it, Cole Kmet's just a guy. They brought in Tanyan, but really, what was Tanyan with Aaron Rodgers? He was just a guy who had a nice season with touchdowns. All the rushing upside in the world for Justin Fields. We know this. But we also know that when we saw him take off a lot of times last year, he was getting banged up and beat up, and he was on the ground for a while. And I know he didn't miss a lot of time, if any, due to injury. But he needs to protect himself better. He needs to develop better as a passer if he wants to last long in the NFL. Justin Fields, love him in redraft, but in Dynasty, I'm hitting the brakes a little bit. There's a lot of good quarterbacks to choose from, which is why I have JF as my QB8, my QB7, the one and only chosen one, Trevor Lawrence. I love Trevor Lawrence as an NFL quarterback, but in fantasy, there's a lot of competition at the position. QB 12 in fantasy points per game last year. Took him a little bit to get going, but once he got going, we saw the best of Trevor Lawrence, and he even has some sneaky rushing upside. We are now going to insert Calvin Ridley into the mix, and as long as Calvin Ridley can remember how to play football at an elite level, this Jaguars offense is going to be hard to stop. It's going to be explosive. They have a couple of nice running backs with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. They even brought in Dearness Johnson. Like, the Jaguars want to go chase a title, and I believe they can. It's going to be because of Trevor Lawrence. However, we also know with Doug Peterson offenses, they're going to continue to establish the run and run the football. And maybe Trevor Lawrence doesn't have as many opportunities as some of these guys I have ranked ahead of him. And it's not because Trevor Lawrence isn't capable of being a top 5 fantasy quarterback year in and year out. I just don't think he's needed or going to be asked to throw that much because there's a lot of other talent on this football team, primarily at the running back position. And we know what Doug Peterson likes to do to win football games. I'm all in on Trevor Lawrence. I believe Jacksonville wins the division and possibly makes a deep playoff run. But in terms of long-term fantasy production, what we get out of Trevor Lawrence on a week-to-week basis is probably what he is. He's going to win a lot of games. And yes, he could be the chosen one. But will he ever be a consistent top 5 fantasy quarterbacks like some of the guys we're going to talk about in a minute? I don't think so. QB7 is just right for Trevor Lawrence. Number 6, Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson to bounce back. Lamar Jackson got paid, and now he has a chip on his shoulder, and he has to prove to the world, hey, I gave everybody a headache for wanting the type of money I wanted, and I got it, and now I'm going to show you that I deserve every penny. We're going to sprinkle in a Todd Monken offense. We're going to sprinkle in OBJ and Zay Flowers and Nelson Aguilar and a whole slew of new wide receivers. It's going to be the most talented offense that Lamar Jackson has ever had around him, and I think he's going to cash in that damn check that his mouth has written through the years. I love the Todd Monken addition over Greg Roman. And no, Lamar's not going to run as much as he's done. But he's not going to need to because he's more than a capable passer. And for once, the Ravens have more than capable pass-catching options. And I didn't even name guys like Likely and Mark Andrews. or J.K. Dobbins. This is a fully loaded offense. Lamar's still going to take off, but he's also going to throw the damn football more. Would it surprise me at all if Lamar was chasing an MVP this year? Absolutely not. And as long as Lamar avoids any big-time injuries, he's going to be a productive fantasy quarterback for years to come. He's almost a locked and loaded top 5 fantasy quarterback if he's healthy, especially when we consider the positive changes the Baltimore Ravens made to make Lamar Jackson better finally this offseason. My QB5, Justin Herbert, and he's a guy that could potentially be volatile. He's a guy who could potentially flip-flop with Lamar or Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. I need to see more out of Justin Herbert. I get it. He looks fantastic, and Twitter loves him, and people love him. But let's face the facts. Justin Herbert was a QB2 in fantasy points per game with 38 touchdowns and 5,014 yards in 2021. Last year, and I get it, he had to deal with injuries, but, Patrick Mahomes also lost Tyreek Hill. But did he skip a beat? No. Did Justin Herbert skip a beat? Last year, yeah, he was a QB 15 in fantasy points per game. Threw for 13 fewer touchdowns and a couple hundred fewer yards. And, almost a full yard less in yards per attempt. Justin Herbert is going to have a chance to improve. They bring in Kellen Moore, who's a really good offensive coordinator from my Cowboys. He's going to get a healthy Mike Williams, going to have a healthy Keenan Allen. He's going to have Quentin Johnson. This is a loaded wide receiver group. We also know Eckler's going to be there for at least one more year. He might not be happy about it because of money, but he's probably going to be there for one more year at a minimum. Now Justin Herbert has to deliver. Can we see Justin Herbert bounce back and perform at a high level? When I say high level, he started his career as a QB7 and QB2 in points per game. Can he get to that mark again? I'm going to say yes, but is it a lock to happen? No, which is why I have Justin Herbert ranked as my QB5. Long term, what is Justin Herbert going to have after this year? Like I said, Austin Eckler, he's getting older. He also wants to get paid. Austin Eckler is probably not going to be with the Chargers in 2024. You can make the case after this offseason of rumors that Keenan Allen might not be with the Chargers in 2024. This could look a lot different for Justin Herbert in terms of weapons. So I'm not going to rank him any higher than QB5. I'm more than comfortable ranking him there. And let's face it, as this offseason goes, he could go a little bit lower in my ranks. QB4, Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. He is possibly my favorite quarterback in the NFL. If you listen to me, I gush over Joe Burrow. QB4 in fantasy points per game, drafted as a 16.3 in FFPC ADP right now. We are now hearing rumors that Joe Burrow is willing to be wise with his contract to pay other players. We're hearing rumors that T. Higgins might also take a team-friendly deal. Joe Burrow knows what it takes to chase a Super Bowl and contend, and it's not getting monstrous deals. We could be seeing Joe Burrow in an offense where he's going to be attached to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for a very, very long time because I believe they all take team-friendly deals. And if that's the case, Joe Burrow is going to continue to operate as a top 4 to 5 fantasy quarterback in his sleep. There's not much else to say here. Joe Burrow might be one of the safer quarterbacks to take in Dynasty that's not named Patrick Mahomes. My QB3. People might kill me for this, but it's Josh Allen. And we're hearing an offseason full of rumors. Stephon Diggs, who knows how long he's going to be on this team, seems pretty disgruntled on and off. We also know that the offseason rumors of the team, the coaching staff, and brass, they want Josh Allen to take fewer hits. They don't want him to run as much. They want him to get rid of the ball a little bit faster so he's not absorbing that much punishment. We saw Josh Allen get a little bit banged up last year. They didn't do a ton to upgrade the receiver position. Granted, they brought in Dalton Kincaid, but this is still very much a questionable wide receiver group outside of Stephon Diggs. We also know that they brought in Latavius Murray and Damian Harris, two big-bodied running backs, which means some of those goal line opportunities that Josh Allen would normally take could go to these running backs. Not saying that we're going to see a big regression from Josh Allen, but I do believe that he takes a little bit of a step back. Instead of being in the conversation to be the QB or QB2 in fantasy points per game, maybe he's more in that 3 to 5 range, which means my second ranked quarterback is Jalen Hurts. Listen, Jalen Hurts is just starting to get going. He's attached to a duo, one of the better wide receiver duos in the NFL with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. You can make a case he's a top 3 tight end in Dallas Goedert, an elite offensive line, and the organization in Philadelphia. When you look at what Howie Roseman does and how he keeps replenishing and rejuvenating this team on both sides of the ball so they can keep winning, they can put a top-flight offensive line out there to protect this great quarterback and Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's just ridiculous the situation Jalen Hurts is. He's in. Could be next to Patrick Mahomes. He might be in the best situation for a quarterback to be in. And Jalen Hurts, we've seen him get it done on the ground. We've also seen him get it done a lot as a thrower. There are no question marks. We know Jalen Hurts can throw the hell out of the football. Everything's in line. Like, if Patrick Mahomes wasn't in the NFL right now, Jalen Hurts is the unquestioned QB1. But because there's a guy named Patrick Mahomes that I'm going to talk about and close with next, Jalen Hurts, very much comfortable ranking him as my QB2. Finally, and we all know who the QB1 is. It is that guy, Patrick Mahomes. And no matter what you give or take away from Patrick Mahomes, all he does is produce fantasy points. All he does is win Super Bowls. Mahomes, QB2 last year in a season where he lost Tyreek Hill, and he still manages to get it done. In fact, threw for 5,250 passing yards sans Tyreek Hill. It was his most passing yards since 2018. 41 touchdowns, his most since 2018. So despite taking away one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes just had a majestic season because that's what Patrick Mahomes does. When it comes to fantasy, Patrick Mahomes has not finished outside of the QB6 in fantasy points per game, and that QB6 year was 2019. Since that, he had QB2, QB5, QB2. Patrick Mahomes may never finish as a quarterback 1 again, but I don't think he finishes worse than a QB4 or QB5, and I think he's pretty much going to be consistent in that 2 to 4 ranking in terms of quarterback finishes for as long as he wants. Patrick Mahomes, you can't get any safer than drafting Patrick Mahomes as the number 1 quarterback off the board, because you know what he's going to deliver on a game-to-game and a year-to-year basis. All right, guys, this is another fantastic rankings episode. The next drop will be my top 12 Dynasty tight ends. Stay tuned for that. Until next time, subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. I'm Anthony Servino. This is the FF Face-Off. We'll see you next time.